This was posted on Reddit subforum No Sleep by user Desdemona de Blake. Title: Infinite Trolley Problem. Maybe this isn't something anyone can understand. I just need someone to listen, or to not have to stand alone under the weight of what I did. My name is Tessa. I'm 32, social worker. Or, I guess, that's who I used to be, back when all this started. I thought that the first incident was a dream. I was driving home, making my way over the pass between my work at a home in Wyoming and my apartment in Idaho. It was a long drive, snowy. I've never liked the snow or the cold, and especially not driving the icy mountain pass in the dead of night. So my heater was blowing full blast, even on my already cracked lips. Eventually, I made it to my apartment and stepped out of the car. For the briefest moment, I thought I smelled the oil, before I sensed nothing at all. It wasn't like sleeping, it was more like surgery. Complete awareness, slight confusion, and then sudden non-existence. Then, I guess I was awake again. I couldn't move my arms or legs. They felt bruised, almost cut into. My heart immediately began to race, my body itched, and the world began to spin. I felt something cold under my back and hip. It felt like I was lying on concrete, on something metal. Someone was crying. It sounded like they were right beside me. I opened my eyes and saw an imposing red sky. It seemed to be evening, despite that I had been driving at night. There wasn't any snow either. I looked to my side and saw a man just next to me, straining to look up at what looked like an old train platform with an iron gate barring the entrance. The man was shouting, something like, "Please, there are 5 of us here. We have families, man. Please, you've got to save us. Save us." That's when I noticed that the guy in front of me was chained to a railway. Tight, the chains looked like they were cutting into his clothes, and they were padlocked behind him. Same, I realized, as me. I looked around frantically until I spotted someone was on the other side of the iron gate. He was barely more than a kid, pacing back and forth frantically. Like a big cat in a zoo. And, behind him, was a lever. I turned to my right and saw her, a woman in a red dress standing at the front of something moving. At first, I thought it was a train. But no, there was no engine car, just this one massive, rusting, contraption grinding slowly in our direction along the same tracks we were chained to. The wind sent ripples through the red fabric of her dress, and tousled the fine black hair cascading from the sides of her mask. Resting her hands in front of her, one clasping the other. She could have gotten off or maybe even searched for some emergency brake, but she was just watching. Specifically, the kid on the platform. I thought, for a moment, that she did so expressionlessly. But no, she had a mask. On one half of her face was the depiction of an old woman, and the other was the depiction of a younger girl. Beneath this, a key dangled from a chain around her neck, rattling from the vibrations of the engine. I pulled desperately at the chains. Nothing. Desperate, I arched my head back. That's when I saw someone behind me, another lady tied to the tracks. Elderly, not even seeming quite awake. Seeing her was when the realization hit me. The trolley problem. I'd heard about it, even thought about it once or twice on my own. But, of course, I'd never pictured myself being the one tied to the tracks, waiting as a monstrous beast of metal slowly grinded its way toward us, sparks igniting with every pebble that the massive, rusted wheels crushed beneath its weight. The smell of burning oil growing stronger until it burned my eyes. I tried to call out in fear, but, honestly, I was too afraid to even speak. So I just looked, begging, pleading, with everything I was through. My face felt like it was burning with tears. Please, do something, do anything. Please. The trolley let out a hellish, metallic ding, like a bell struck hard enough to crack. I nearly jumped when I heard the woman on the other track call out in a frail voice. Please, son, pull the lever. I've lived my life, and there are young folks over there with so much left of their own. Please pull it. It's my choice. Crunching from the grinding of grit on the track. I strained to look up at the kid behind the metal gate. Even with the older woman's words, he looked petrified. For the longest time, he didn't move, like he was as frozen as I felt. The metal tracks vibrated beneath me. The heavy movements of the beast created a low roar that nearly drowned out all else. It was nearly on us. Please, the man beside me begged. I want to see my kids again, please. Mechanical hissing as the trolley slowed to just a crawl, not to stop, no, only to make what was to come even slower. Finally, the kid made the only choice he really had. He pulled the lever. I closed my eyes. I couldn't watch as the trolley and the woman in red neared her. But neither could I plug my ears. I heard everything, the screams, the wet crunches, the deafening pops of the chains under massive iron wheels. And I could feel bits of metal pelting the top of my head, the wet splashes of viscera on my face. Then, finally, the brief mercy of silence, followed by the whispered words of an otherworldly voice, all survivors must choose. Dizziness, the crisp smell of winter, non-existence. I woke up in my bed screaming. It took me a moment to realize that I was no longer chained to a track. Rather, I was in bed. A heated blanket kept me warm, and my wife talked with a strained tone. As soon as she saw my eyes open, she dropped her phone and began frantically checking my pulse, my temperature, the bump on the back of my head. Asking 1,000 questions. All while the sounds of the trolley and the screams drowned her words out. From what I later learned, my wife had seen me arrive home. I'd stepped out of the car, slipped on the ice, and hit my head on the car door. She took me to the hospital. Concussion, and red rings on my skin in the shape of the chains. I didn't tell anyone about what I'd seen, and I told myself that the marks were likely nothing more than a skin condition. For all I knew, it was just the brain injury that had so played on my dreams and memories. And, truthfully, I didn't want to think there were anything more. I tried not to think about it, either. Not anything beyond asking myself why my brain had come up with such a nasty experience. Feelings of helplessness in my own childhood, maybe. Too many late-night horror movies. Who could know? All I did know was that I was more wary of ice than ever. And terrified by the sounds of trains. A year passed. I had to quit my job due to growing stress. I told myself, at the time, that it was the same burnout most people in social work face. Horrific stories of survival at the hands of horrific abusers, day in, day out. Triggers of one's own horrific memories that are fired off without mercy, especially when working with children. In a system that only seems to make the problems worse, while the best you can do is show empathy and hope that it will somehow be enough. And then seeing, time and time again, how it isn't. I took a job at a flower shop. It was peaceful and oddly fulfilling. The thing about flowers, I think, is that they respond to your efforts. There's no bureau making sure they don't get enough water, and no significant emotional consequence when a customer kills them. Just small care, small stakes, small choices. On the day it happened again, I remember that I was checking my watch. These days, my wife picked me up at the end of her own shift. I didn't really drive much anymore, either. Suddenly, I felt really dizzy. This wasn't uncommon at the time. Ever since my fall, I'd had lightheadedness here and there. Nothing to be too concerned with, according to my doctor. If anything, it probably had more to do with my blood pressure. I took a seat and closed my eyes. Then I smelled the oil, felt the confusion, and then a twinkle of non-existence. No, this was not the effect of any renewed concussion. I knew now, this was absolutely real. When I opened my eyes, I knew exactly where I was. Standing on a concrete platform, overlooking two sets of tracks. A fiery red sky burning overhead. And in the distance, the trolley from hell and the woman in red. Even from the distance, I could tell that she was staring directly at me. Nothing else. Hands grasped calmly in front of her, just like before. Again, she approached slowly, ever slowly, chugging her way on the trolley toward 5 people chained to the tracks. 3 men, a woman about my age, and a child. No, no, no. I couldn't do this. Not again. I had to do something to stop this. I reached for the metal bars of the gate dividing the platform from the tracks. I grabbed on to climb them, but then frantically pulled my hands back to me. I felt the burning pain before the lines in my palms began to pour blood. The gate, the bars, they were angled, sharpened, finely as razor blades. "Let me out!" the child screamed, thrashing in their binds. Seeing them brought the world to a standstill. Though I knew they weren't, they could have easily passed for a child I had cared for when I'd worked in social services. Same curly brown hair, same gangly build. They were a child who had told me, barely even able to breathe, about how much they didn't want to go home. About the horrors that awaited him there. All while I could do nothing but tell them that one day they would be free. If only they held on long enough. Wondering, even at the time, if I had been giving them false hope. "Help us, damn it," said an old man bound next to the child. His shouts yanked me somewhat out of my stunned state. Still barely coping, I was only able to lift my trembling palms up to show the blood spilling from the lines in my hands. As if doing so could make them understand that I didn't know how to fix this. As if it would make me understand that fact any better. "Pull the lever," shouted someone on the track opposite of them. A man, dark hoodie, penetrating stare. His teeth were bared, not ferocious, but determined, braced. Somehow, I had expected for the person on the track alone to make this easier. To demand his life, to beg and scream that a child and 4 others be killed so that he could live. But no, like the old woman, he was demanding I let the trolley kill him. Again, he shouted, "1 person, 5 people. One of them is a kid. Just pull the lever, for fuck's sake." His voice trembled, like it was the bravest he could force himself to be. I stumbled as best I could to the lever behind me. I nearly pulled it, but, instead, I made the mistake of looking over toward the approaching woman in red. Still staring at me, still watching, entirely uninterested in the carnage soon to come just under her red heels. When our eyes met, that's when I sensed it. Not malice, not anger, not joy. Pure, chilling curiosity, like she couldn't care less about the outcomes. Only thee in the chaos and doubt struggling ruthlessly in my mind. I froze. In that moment, I remembered what the lady in red had told me a year before. All survivors must choose. Suddenly, I realized why I was there. I'd survived, so now I had to make the same choice as the kid who had chosen to save me. Somehow, I knew that I wasn't the only one. Every single person who had survived with me on the track would have to make the same choice. Today, tomorrow, a year from now, all of us would be choosing. Let 5 people die or intercede to kill only one. You bitch, are you going to let a kid die? Let 5 people die. How many people had chosen before us? How many would choose after? The math started to play out in my head. 5 survivors, forced to choose. 5 more destined to choose after them, multiplying like a plague. That was how it worked, wasn't it? Or was it? Pull the damn lever. The grinding was close now, I didn't have any longer. Yet my thoughts weren't clear, and all I could picture was the kid on the platform before me, reeling under the weight of this same choice. This same, awful, crippling choice that everyone who survived this moment would also have to face. I pulled my bloodied hands away from the lever and pressed them to my ears. Even so, I could hear the screams, the crunch of bones, the chains snapping violently. 5 times as long and as horrifying as the time before. Warm blood pooled over and inside of my ears from my own hands. I couldn't even hear the whispers of the woman in red over the man screaming on the tracks. I'll remember you, and I will find you. It's funny how little impact a threat carries when you think you may deserve whatever comes. To this day, I don't know if I made the right choice. Only that the game can never truly end, only grow in scale. Did my choice even matter? How many people will make the same choice I had? Enough that the number of choosers in the game stayed minimal instead of exponentially growing. Or, in the end, will this game consume the entire world? Was it always too late, and did I kill those people, that child, for nothing? I wonder if I'll ever know if the choice I made was right, why I still feel her eyes on me, always, just out of sight. Did I satiate her curiosity? Maybe she continues to watch because somewhere, deep down, I'm still on the platform. Still trying to choose. Still trying to justify my choice.